From the mysteries of the deep to the power of human innovation, the future of our oceans is in our hands. Together, we can protect the oceans that sustain us all. Join me on a journey of discovery, innovation, and change. Let's create a future where our oceans are safe, healthy, and harmonious. This is Harmonious Oceans. Hey everyone, welcome back to Harmonious Oceans, the series where we dive deep into the challenges our oceans face and how we can protect them. Today we're going to be exploring the fourth letter, M, monitoring seawater levels. This is one of the most crucial and fascinating topics when it comes to climate change and the future of our planet. So why should we care about seawater levels, and what's the big deal? The ocean covers over 70% of our planet. They're like the Earth's thermostat, and when things get out of balance, it affects everything, from our weather to our food supply to where we can live. Monitoring seawater levels isn't just for the scientists, it's for everyone because it impacts all of us. The data collected from monitoring sea levels is like a treasure map for understanding our world. It helps with everything from creating accurate nautical charts for ships to navigate safely, to predicting massive weather events like tsunamis and hurricanes, to tracking the slow creep of sea level rise over decades. Imagine being able to see the future of our planet and make decisions today that will protect it. That's the power of this data. Alright, so let's talk about the not so awesome part, rising sea levels. And no, this isn't something happening in the distant future. It's happening right now, and it's happening fast. According to the NOAA's 2022 report, by 2050, global sea levels could rise by nearly a foot compared to the year 2000. By the end of this century, if we do not take action, we could see a rise of up to 6.6 feet. Think about that. Cities that we love, Miami, New York, New Orleans, could all be underwater. But it's not just about losing land. It's also about losing homes, communities, and even entire ways of life. So, what's causing this? Well, there are two main culprits: melting ice and thermal expansion. As our planet heats up, the ice sheets in Greenland and Antarctica are melting like ice cubes in the sun, adding tons of water to our oceans. At the same time, as the water gets warmer, it expands, kind of like blowing up a balloon. Even if the amount of water stays the same, the ocean will still take up more space, pushing sea levels higher. But it's not just a global issue. Local factors make it even more complex. Some places are sinking while the seas are rising. For example, in Jakarta, Indonesia, groundwater pumping is causing the city to sink so fast that they're planning to move the capital to a new location. And let's not forget tectonic shifts and geological quirks, like in Norfolk, Virginia, where the land itself is sinking, making the sea level rise even more dramatic. And then there's the scariest part, the effects. Rising sea levels means more extreme weather, like stronger hurricanes and more severe flooding. It means losing land to the ocean, which isn't just about losing property, it's about losing history, culture, and livelihoods. Entire island nations are at risk of disappearing. And then there's the economic hit. Imagine losing billions of dollars in property, infrastructure, and even whole cities. And don't forget about saltwater intrusion, where rising seas are contaminating freshwater supplies, threatening drinking water and agriculture in coastal areas. Now, let's hear from Dr. Shona Patterson, who is the Director of Global Lives Research Centre, Senior Lecturer at Brunel University, London. She is a member of the London Climate Change Partnership, which is the Centre for Expertise on Climate Change Adaptation. She is also a member of Catching the Wave Collective, which combines expertise in environmental and social sciences with a broad range of art disciplines in order to engage multiple audiences in discourse around oceans and coasts. One of the areas you've been working deeply in is future Earth coasts. Could you talk more about it? What are the challenges and how we can protect the oceans?
Of course, Future Earth Coasts is a global research platform that brings together all sorts of different scientists into the same sort of space to talk about coasts primarily, but coasts and oceans in general. and the research group itself has been around for many years now, for decades in fact, and actually came out of an organization called LOICS, so Land and Sea Interactions in the Coastal Zone. I was brought on as the scientific officer a couple of years ago when I worked primarily for the International Programs Office. And what that gave me the opportunity to do was to really connect with scientists all over the globe. We had a scientific advisory council that was in sort of Australia and New Zealand, in Vietnam, in China, in Nigeria, and then across into sort of South America, in Brazil, and up into North America as well through the US and Canada. And it provides a real opportunity to bring all sorts of different knowledge into that space, as you say, of how we actually think about the oceans and coasts, and how we might look at both protection and conservation, but also use of different types of resources. And then really trying to understand, when you think about coasts, you know, they're the most dynamic space that we have. They bring together the greatest confluence of biophysical and social dynamics. And so there's no way that one set of knowledge systems can be used to really help understand these systems. So really trying to bring in biophysical scientists, people are looking at oceanographic circulations, people are looking about the movement of sediment across different deltas and these kinds of things, but also economists. People are looking at social and cultural influences, the idea of social resilience within coastal spaces. So really trying to have that conversation across all sorts of different lenses. And that was a real pleasure to be able to work on. And
following on from, you talked about wider social and cultural impacts. What do you think are the causes and impacts of rising seawater levels? So how do you think this will impact the world economy and the wider and social cultural dynamics?
It's a really interesting question in terms of sort of why sea levels are changing. And when we've seen this over millennia on the globe, as temperatures change and ice forms or melts. We're seeing ice melting in Antarctica dramatically right now.
Yeah.
And that will change the sort of levels of water that exist on this planet. But we're also seeing temperatures of sea level rise dramatically,
Yeah.
and that dynamics of water as it expands will have a massive influence again on just the sheer volume of water that exists. Yes, large cities, you look at Miami will be underwater. You look at New York, you look at the impacts of water on London, and the conversations even now about moving the Thames barrier or building a new one are vital without a shadow of a doubt. And that will have a massive impact on just what we do and what we can do on coastal spaces. But for me, really the more pertinent questions sort of surround small island nations. When you look at the loss of entire nations and entire cultures and languages and traditions and cultures, you know, we start to lose Vanuatu, we start to lose Kiribati, we start to lose all of these different nations. And where are these people going to go? And how do we as a globe really think about the maintenance of these cultures and of these phenomenal groups of people? That's a responsibility that I think globally we have that often gets lost in the idea of, oh, we need to save the big cities. For me, it's those marginalized communities that really haven't driven climate change. They haven't driven these global emissions of greenhouse gases, and yet they're the ones who are really going to bear the brunt, and are bearing the brunt right now. Climate change isn't something that's coming in the future. It's something that happens and is happening right now, and we're experiencing the consequences of that.
And you're currently working at Catching a Wave Collective, am I right?
So yes, Catching a Wave Collective is a really interesting project, actually. It brought together artists and scientists and a communication specialist across different universities that they're just really passionate about ocean spaces. and really started to think about, well, how do we combine different types of knowledge, and what does that mean? We were able to work with a couple of really amazing artists and produce glass wave artifacts.
Oh, wow.
And I'll send you one of these.
Oh, thank
Um,
you.
so this was the idea of, can we capture a moment in time of the ocean, of a wave in the ocean,
Yeah.
and can we make people think about the ocean in a different way? So if you were to come
Wow. Yeah.
up against a wave like this in the middle of, I don't know, King's Cross or something like that, what would it make you stop and think about our relationship to the ocean, and how we view the ocean and its importance to us culturally and socially as well as economically? So yeah, we had these were made by a glass scientist in Wisconsin, working with folks in North Carolina and East Carolina University, and then I was in Ireland at the time, so we had Cork, the University of College Cork, and all sorts of people were involved in the conceptualization of this, and we chose glass very specifically because glass, although it's solid and you can hold it, it's also very fragile, and
Yeah.
it also disappears over time as it erodes and it breaks down into form different shapes. And so that's exactly what the ocean is doing. The ocean is constantly changing. We're seeing the difference that temperature is making. You mentioned ocean acidification within your thoughts as well. We're constantly shifting the dynamics of the ocean, and that is sort of replicated in the concept of glass.
And lastly, what kind of policy changes do you think are needed at a global scale?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question. I don't know if we could ever get to a policy change on a global scale. I'd love to think we could. I
Yeah.
mean, we have things like the UN law of the sea, and big policy pieces like that do a lot to help sort of control movement across the sea, and all this. But I actually think that the policies that will make the greatest difference are the local ones. Locally, we could really strengthen the policies that we use. And I think conversations like the ones you're having, conversations that are innovative, that are really thoughtful, can really drive that change within national policy, and then subnational policy. And I think that's really where the shift will come. And the more awareness we have, the more
Yes,
conversations
definitely.
we have,
Yes,
the more
yes.
open we are with each other in terms of the futures that we want, and
Yeah.
how we might get to those futures, then I think we have an opportunity to change things, or at least I'd like to think we do.
And on the flip side, are there
Mhm.
any simple steps that, everybody can do, everybody can make the change?
I mean, there's a lot that we can all do individually. Whether it's changing the way we think about food, whether it's changing the way we think about clothes. A pair
Yeah,
of jeans, the amount of water that's needed to
yeah,
make a pair of
yeah,
jeans. We can we're in a very privileged position where we can think about those sorts of things.
100%.
Um, but I mean, I think just listening to each other is actually the biggest change we can make, when we have people like you who are really passionate about this sort of subject, really thinking about future Earths and future coasts, and futures themselves.
Yeah.
The more we can stop and just listen to each other, that's the greatest thing that we have, and the greatest empathy that we can bring to this situation.
As we just heard from Dr. Shona, whether you have an interest in art, science, or technology, we all can make a difference. As young people, we have more power than we realize. So, what can we do? Get educated and spread awareness. The first step is knowing what's happening and why it matters. Watch documentaries, read articles, and follow environmental organizations. Share what you learn with your friends, family, or on social media. The more people know, the more pressure there is for change. Support renewable energy. Fossil fuels are a major drive of climate change. By supporting renewable energy like wind, solar, and hydro, we can reduce carbon emissions and slow the rate of sea level rise. Join or start local environmental projects. Look for local groups that are working on climate change issues like beach cleanups, tree planting, or wetland restoration projects. If there isn't one, start one. Even small actions can create a ripple effect that leads to a bigger one. Live sustainably. Every small change in our daily lives adds up. Reduce your use of single-use plastics, recycle, conserve water, and be mindful of your energy consumption. Now, let's talk about the tech that's helping us in this fight. Technology is on our side and there are some incredible innovations making waves. Blue tech, smart buoy systems. Imagine buoys floating in the ocean, but these aren't your average buoys. They're packed with sensors that monitor ocean conditions in real time, collecting data on everything from temperature to wave height to even sea levels. Companies like Blue Ocean Gear are using this data to help scientists understand and predict changes in the ocean. This real-time data is crucial for things like climate research, environmental management, and even disaster response. The second one being satellite altimetry. Satellites in space measure the height of sea surface, giving us a detailed and accurate picture of what's happening globally. It's like having a giant ruler in the sky that helps scientists track changes over time and predict future trends. This data is essential for understanding how fast sea levels are rising and what we need to do to prepare. And lastly, nature-based solutions. Sometimes the best technology isn't about having gadgets. It's about working with nature. Restoring natural barriers like mangroves, seagrasses, and wetlands can absorb the impact of rising seas, protect coastal communities, and even capture carbon from the atmosphere. These ecosystems are like natural superheroes, defending our coasts while also providing habitats for wildlife and supporting local economies. So, what's the bottom line here? Monitoring seawater levels is crucial. It's like taking the pulse of our planet. It helps us understand what's happening now and what's coming up in the future. Thanks for joining me today on Harmonious Oceans. If you found this video inspiring, don't forget to hit that like button, share it with your friends, and subscribe to stay tuned for more. Remember, together we can turn the tide on climate change and keep our oceans and our planet healthy and thriving.